In this episode, we talk to Dr. Bill Rawls about cellular health and the surprising impact of cellular damage and degeneration on our overall well-being.
Dr. Rawls faced a health crisis in his 40s, and finding that the medical system he'd worked in for years couldn't offer him the answers, he applied his knowledge to researching wellness at the cellular level.
He cured himself and is now thriving. Age 65, he's an active outdoor enthusiast, kiteboards regularly, and is in the best shape of his life.
It really is a fascinating episode as we talk about how to slow down aging and the herbal supplements we can take to help boost our overall health.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast with me, James.
And me, Claire. So I don't know when this is going to go out, but we have had quite an exciting few days because it's been someone's birthday.
It has been my birthday and we've had a great time, haven't we?
It went on and on and on.
Really been stretching it out.
Basically, amazing wife. And I just took you out on lots of fun things to do.
Well, we did. I mean, I may have arranged a DJ gig for Saturday afternoon, which threw your plans out. So we had to extend to Monday to go for lunch.
Yeah, we did. We DJ'd on your birthday, which was really fun. So like the Midlife Mentors DJing in our local pub. Some classic house music. If you're around in London, come and check us out because we do a session every month. And then I took you for fondue yesterday, which sounds like a really exciting thing to do, but there is such a thing as too much cheese.
There definitely is. I think the novelty value of fondue is great, but by the time you're getting to like the bottom of the fondue barrel, they're like, oh, my tummy is hurting now.
So we were rolling around Soho. We were going to go go out and wander around some Christmas markets, but we were so fondued up, we decided to come home.
So I'm sure our guest, we've got an amazing guest today. I'm sure he's going to say that fondue is definitely not the thing to be eating. But I should hate to add, that is, I think it was 10 years since my last fondue. So it's like once every 10 years I have one.
I think we know that fondue isn't a meal of choice, but it was a birthday treat.
It was a birthday treat. Okay,
anyway,
so what's life without exceptions, right?
Exactly.
It's all about balance.
It
isn't
is.
It, Bill?
So there you just heard from our guest there. Let's introduce our guest. We've got Dr. Bill Rawls, MD. The author of the best-selling book, The Cellular Wellness Solution. So, Bill, we'll let you kind of introduce yourself. It's fascinating, your book and your kind of work that you're doing. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background and personal journey and how you come to write this book?
Yeah, sure. It's and this is definitely a perspective on midlife. You guys are the midlife mentors, and this is kind of looking from beyond midlife and actually doing better now than I did in midlife because I crashed right in the middle of it, like a lot of people do. So that firsthand experience really tells you something, and that's a big part of my journey. So I became a physician. I was attracted to the specialty of obstetrics and gynecology, dealing with women. Women are very keen on their health. And so I was dealing with well people generally who wanted to stay well, not heavy drug management of chronic illness. And, delivering a baby was just really cool. But at that time in the United States, the call was quite demanding. So I was on call for the hospital, 24-hour hospital call for labor and delivery in emergency room, in addition to working in the office every second to third day, every second to third weekend, like from Friday morning until Monday morning on the weekends.
Wow.
And that, when I was in my 30s, I could still do that. But it came with loss of sleep. I mean, when I was on call, I generally, if I got 4 hours of sleep, I would be lucky. And this went on for a long time. So as I went into my 40s, my health started deteriorating. And by age 47, I basically crashed. But, it wasn't just you don't really associate it with all the lack of sleep. It was all the other stress of just pushing to try to keep up with everything and pushing through sleep to try to, be a good community person and a good dad and a good husband. And I crashed. I developed every symptom you can imagine: heart symptoms, brain symptoms. My whole body was falling apart, severe arthritis, and didn't really associate it with the lack of sleep at that point. Identified first with fibromyalgia, found out later I was carrying some of the microbes associated with Lyme disease, probably had been since I was a child. I spent my whole time playing in the woods and getting tick bites. So they were in my system, but the medical system really couldn't help me. It had drugs to offer to relieve the symptoms, but that was about it. As I found that, I first identified with chronic Lyme disease, I took antibiotics, they made me worse, and just everything was a dead end until I embraced an herbal protocol. It was really handfuls of herbal supplements, a couple of times a day, and I started getting better. And of course, by that time, I was changing my lifestyle. I had to give up obstetrics. I had to change my medical practice, everything. But for about, a 5 to 10 year period, my life was pretty rough, right there in the middle of when it's supposed to be kind of good. And but I gradually got my life back, and that's been 15 or 20 years ago. And since then, I've had just the greatest life, and I refined my health habits. I became a true health nut. But I've been taking herbals for ever since, continually, for almost 20 years now. And at age 66, I'm doing things that a lot of people have to give up at midlife. I'm still kite surfing. I'm learning how to wing foil. I'm doing all these really interesting things. I'm traveling. I'm really enjoying life at age 66 like I never thought I would. So part of that journey has been asking that question, well, what did the herbs do? And, what kinds of things are going on here? And how does that affect our lives? How does it affect aging, our health, and our quality of life, which is so dependent on if we feel well? And it really gets back to taking it down to the cellular level and looking at it from that point. So that's a short story of how I came around to all of this.
I love that. It's a really inspiring story.
It's really fascinating, because actually autoimmune disease is something that's very close to my heart, because my brother, who's a few years older than me, has MS, and he's now in a wheelchair, as in he's deteriorated hugely. So that is very hard for our family, for all of us to watch my brother health deteriorate in that way. And also, just a few months ago, I discovered that I had vitiligo, which is also an autoimmune disease. And that flared up when I was 10 years old and then went away, which I think is quite unusual. And then it came back during a time of high stress. So earlier on this year, I had burnout, and it was my body just kind of just went into flat mode, basically. And it was after that the vitiligo started appearing on my body again. So autoimmune, and then obviously because of what we do, and because I'm fascinated everything you talk about in your book as well, like we started to dive into more herbs and all of that kind of stuff. So this is why James and I were so keen. Not only is your book amazing, but so keen to speak to you, because we have personal experience of the autoimmune disease side of things.
It's true. It touches all of us, and it's it's so important that we start recognizing the underlying causes of these chronic illness. So what's missing in the healthcare system worldwide? It doesn't matter whether you're talking about Europe, UK, America, it's all driven by pharmaceuticals. And we are treating the manifestations of the illness. Like MS, we can block some of the processes that occur in the illness. We can block some of the inflammation. We can block some of the symptoms. We can, address those things, but we're not getting at the underlying causes. And the fact of the matter is, the underlying causes of these illnesses is coming into view quite clearly at this point. And I can make that statement, if you understand chronic Lyme disease, you really understand all of chronic illness, because it's all connected. It's all very much the same thing when you take it down to the cellular level. I have met virtually no chronic Lyme patients that don't have enough neurological symptoms that mimic MS that they don't say, well, yeah, maybe I've got MS. I went through that. It's like, do I have multiple sclerosis? Is this going to progress? And interestingly, the microbes associated with Lyme disease have been found to be associated with MS, but along with a lot of other microbes. So from where I'm sitting, there's a microbe factor in every chronic illness. And if you're interested, I can give you an explanation of exactly why autoimmune illness occurs looking at that model.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'd love to hear that.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, when we look at microbes, there's a lot of attention on COVID. Everybody looks at Ebola viruses being threatening, AIDS, that sort of thing. But when you look at tick-borne microbes, they're really low-grade pathogens. People don't die of acute Lyme disease. They may die of chronic manifestations that can be identified to be connected with it, but they don't die of acute. Most people don't get sick. 95% of the people that I talk to don't remember a tick bite or any chronic symptoms. So that's Lyme disease. So who hadn't had a tick bite, a bug bite, something, right? But there's so many other things. So from the time you're born, and possibly even before, you're exposed to low-grade microbe threats that don't make you very sick. Putting things in your mouth, respiratory infections, hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them, just during childhood, but then all through our lifetime. Encounters, intimate contacts with other people. Food, there's so many ways that microbes can get in our body. And most of the things we're exposed to have a low potential to cause severe acute illness. But that doesn't mean they can't get in our body and they don't stay. So what all microbes want is to get to your bloodstream, because that way they can get to the cells and tissues in your body, which is basically food. If they can break down cells and break down tissues, that's a food source to make more microbes. That's what they need. That's why they invade us. And this is happening all through our lifetime. Now, if you're healthy and your cells are healthy, then you're okay, you think. But a lot of these things can get past the immune system. And when they do, viruses, bacteria, tick-borne, mosquito-borne, all these things that we're exposed to, Epstein-Barr virus, chlamydia, bacteria, mycoplasmas, and ureaplasmas, there's just scores and scores and scores of these low-grade pathogens. They can make it past our immune system and they invade our cells. Now, our cells aren't defenseless. Any of our cells in our body, brain cells, heart cells, have defense mechanisms for expelling invasive microbes, but they're sneaky, they're very stealthy, and they can become dormant inside of our cells. And this is really the key to understanding the whole thing. So microbes can become dormant inside of our cells. Now, like a bacteria is like 1,000 times smaller than one of your cells. So you can have a bunch of bacteria in there in a dormant or quiescent state, and the cell keeps right on functioning like nothing's happening. And they can stay there indefinitely. So if you look at the total mass of microbes on Earth, at any given point in time, 60% of it is dormant. So if conditions aren't just right for a microbe to thrive, they can just go dormant or quiescent. And it turns out this is happening. And not only are we getting things from the outside, things are crossing over from our gut and our sinuses and our skin and getting to the bloodstream and making it past the immune system and getting to our tissues. And there's more and more evidence accumulating that this is happening. So as long as your microbes are dormant and your cells are healthy, well, that's what wellness is. But say you go for 20 years that you're sleep deprived and don't have a chance to eat a good diet, and all these stress factors add up and it starts stressing your cells. And then throw on top of that just the natural aging of cells, your cells become less able to keep these things dormant. The microbes reactivate. They can reactivate throughout the body, but sometimes they reactivate at specific locations, like in your joints or in your brain, and contribute to Parkinson's or dementia, or in your skin. So they can reactivate. So it's not like one single microbe, it's lots of things that you've been re-exposed to. So when these things reactivate, they start emerging from cells, they start breaking down those cells and breaking other cells down to basically create food for microbes. Your body shifts from a state of healthy cells to a state of that promotes microbe growth that's being perpetuated by the microbes. Well, as these microbes are emerging from your cells, your immune system at that point starts working against you, because it sees this going on and says, oh no, we've got to do something about that. And it starts attacking these cells. And that's what autoimmunity is. But there's a grade of autoimmunity that is occurring with every chronic illness. It's in Lyme disease, it's in everything else. But we don't define it as an autoimmune illness until people are really, really sick and it's going on to a high level. So why is that? Because the drugs for autoimmunity are so toxic that we don't want to expose people with lower levels of autoimmunity to these really, really toxic drugs. So we set the standards of what defines an autoimmune illness pretty high. But that doesn't mean that every single one of us, even when we're healthy, we have a little bit of that going on, but it's not enough for us to see symptoms. Now, how's that for an interesting?
That's fascinating, isn't it? And I had
Yeah.
so many thoughts while you were talking there. Yeah, I guess I was going to ask a couple of things. I guess on a practical level, you can't really stop yourself being exposed to these microbes because they're everywhere, right? You're going to get insect
Yep.
bites. And would you say, like in modern society, there's even more? We've got so many more pollutants and things like that that we're potentially more exposed than we would have been in centuries gone by.
I think that's right. That's hitting the nail right on the head. You know, it's where there's COP28 going on right now, and for the first time in one of these meetings, they spent yesterday talking about all the health ramifications of global warming. And it's not just the increased heat. It's the fact that there's so many high concentrations of petrochemicals that are just permeating everything. And what these things do is compromise cellular health. They stress our cells. So you throw on top of that, you know, not eating a good diet and just low grade exposure wherever you go, the air you breathe, your water, your food. I mean, you know, they're finding microplastics and forever chemicals in virtually everything now. And the harm these things do is they basically, you know, the cells incorporate them like they would be useful molecules they could use, but they aren't. So they basically just compromise cellular functions. So it weakens our cells and makes our cells more vulnerable to all of these things. So yes, it is something that we can pay attention to. And, you know, my journey studying what herbs do is help me understand what's going on there, you know, how the herbs can actually protect us from all of these factors that are so important.
Honestly, this is so fascinating, so fascinating. I'm just sat here kind of on the edge of my seat as you were talking about all of that. So Bill, like, how can we take better care of our own cellular health, particularly around illness and aging? So tell us how we can do that.
Yeah, you know, it's we make things complicated in conventional medicine. You know, we compartmentalize. You know, we've got pulmonologist and cardiologist and gastroenterologist, and all of it's divided up because everybody takes their little block of their systems. But it really boils down to cellular health. That's the smallest functional unit in the body. Everything that happens in the body is a reaction to cells, or cells creating that action. But to function as a unit, we have to have all of those cellular functions coordinated. So that's what hormones and chemical messengers do. So all the cells in the body are talking to all the other cells in the body all the time. The brain is kind of leading that charge. But if you take it down to that one single cell, all cells in the body, every single cell in the body needs 5 basic things. And that helps simplify all of it. So every cell in the body needs the right nutrients to work, to generate energy, to do their job. Now that varies. It's like thyroid cells need iodine to produce thyroid hormone, and brain cells need glucose because they use a lot of energy. Heart cells tend to, that slow burn. They need fats to generate energy. But if you're eating a whole food diet, you're going to give your cells the nutrients they need. So it's really important. Second is a clean environment. So all those toxic substances that we're talking to that just enter our system and penetrate our cells, that's a big stress factor that I think we're all need to be paying more attention to. Third thing is our cells need good flow, good blood flow. Right? So to purge toxins and get nutrients, so all of our cells are crammed in a little tight space, and they depend on fluid that leaks from the bloodstream to deliver nutrients, but also help them purge metabolic waste and toxic stuff. So all of our cells are constantly trying to get to purge those things. And so we need extra blood flow from exercising, from being physically active. It's really important. So one of the biggest things that exercise does is flush our cells. The solution to pollution is dilution. And so our cells need to be constantly flushed. So being just moderately active through the day does wonders for making that happen. We talk about how do we detoxify? Well, you go out and take a walk. That's how you do it, because it's going to help your cells purge all these toxic substances. Fourth thing is our cells need downtime. Now, some cells, like our heart cells, rest in between beats, but most of our cells need a good night's sleep to catch up from working all day, to repair internal functions and just restore and renew themselves. And the fifth thing is protection from microbes. And a lot of times our immune system isn't enough. So we've depended on plants, what we call the chemistry of the plant, for ages, in the form of herbs and ancient forage foods that were wild plants. We always had this. And we traded it all for drugs about 100 years ago, and we've been hurting for that ever since. Because every plant has antimicrobial properties that help us control all this microbe, what we call the blood and tissue microbiome, helps us keep all those pathogens in check and dormant.
Wow, it's fascinating stuff. So I want to ask there, like, how can we use herbs and supplements to help our cellular health? I guess that's a complex question because it depends on what the issue might be, but
Sure. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of ways to use herbs, and it depends on the herb. And when you look at herbs, there's a pretty broad spectrum from, food plants and culinary herbs all the way to herbs that have strong drug-like effects that are almost poisonous. And so, yeah, we want to stay away from that end of the spectrum and more down toward these herbs that are really helping us. And what my journey found is, digging into the science of how these things work. They don't work like drugs. What they're doing is protecting our cells. You know, that's a lot of people think of herbs as being weak drugs that we take for symptoms. And I found that, you know, they don't, because they don't, you know, they don't block that symptom like a drug will. They're not as potent. And I found that's not really how they're working. So herbs like adaptogens, anti-inflammatories like turmeric, there's so many, and we can get into some specifics if y'all would like. But what the herbs are doing, we're basically taking the plant's defense system. So plants solve problems with chemistry. They make this robust spectrum of chemicals that we call phytochemicals that protect the plant's cells against free radicals, against toxic substances, against microbes of every variety. But it also, that complex chemistry also includes the signaling that plants use to coordinate all of their cellular functions. So when we take an herb, we're taking that complex chemistry. It's an intelligent system that we are introducing into our body that gives our cells extra protection against all these stress factors that we just talked about, including this wide spectrum of more microbes. Now, it won't eliminate all the dormant microbes in your body. You know, that I found isn't the goal. The goal is keeping your cells healthy, suppressing these things when they do erupt, so that you can restore normal cellular health and keep your cells healthy. And so typically symptoms go away when you're taking an herb, but it takes a lot longer. So with a drug, you're blocking that symptom, but you're not getting rid of the causes, so that as soon as, you know, that dose runs out, that symptom's going to come right back. So with an herb, what you're doing is blocking the stress factors. So you're actually restoring cellular health. And I like to think of it this way, you know, you take this herb for a long time. For me, it was months and months before I started really noticing any difference. And symptoms just gradually started melting away. Not one symptom, not a targeted symptom, every symptom in my body. My joints healed. My heart healed, my brain healed, everything in my body. And a lot of things that I didn't expect, like my cholesterol went down, my blood sugar went down, my blood pressure went down. All these things happened with taking these herbs continually because they were restoring cellular health. So the symptoms melted away, and this thing called lasting wellness emerged in its place. And it's pretty remarkable. It was quite an experience. I get excited about just talking about it.
Well, we're getting so excited. I would love to ask you, actually. I mean, I'm sure there was a few that you were taking, but I would love to know which ones restored wellness for you. Could you share that, Bill?
Sure. Yeah, I featured all of that in the book. So it's when you look at a plant, what you're getting is how the plant solves problems within its environment. So it's producing this chemistry to solve whatever microbe stress or other stress factors are in that environment. And sometimes that chemistry doesn't jive very well with ours. Like, nobody would make the mistake of eating poison ivy to get healthy, right? But most plants, many plants, in fact, the majority of plants mesh very well with our biochemistry. So the things that we've defined as herbs are things that humans have just recognized over thousands of years have this beneficial, they're in sync with our biochemistry. So there are a lot of things out there. And if you take a walk in the woods anywhere in the world, half the plants that you're going to see have the potential of providing you benefit. But we have these things that are now well defined. So what I gravitated toward is herbs that had stronger antimicrobial properties. In the beginning, I thought, I'm killing this microbe that causes me to be sick, that's associated with Lyme disease. And by the time I really studied it, I realized that's not the case. I'm not going to eradicate that microbe. And it's much more than one microbe. It's this spectrum of everything that I've picked up in my lifetime erupting in my body. And so my ultimate goal was to, get rid of weak cells that had been compromised by microbes, and restore everything to a dormant state, a balanced microbiome. And the interesting thing about the herbs is they're selective. So like an antibiotic kills your normal flora, right? You can only take it so long or it'll just make you really sick. That's what happened to me. Herbs are selective. They're for pathogens, but they don't disrupt your normal flora. So they actually balance your gut microbiome and your skin microbiome, along with balancing that internal microbiome, which is really fascinating. So some of the herbs that I used, top of the list was Japanese knotweed. Yeah, it's an invasive. It grows in people's gardens. Gardeners try to get rid of it, but it has these wonderful health properties that are just extraordinary. And one of them being it is an excellent source of resveratrol, which is what you find in grapes. Well, actually, Japanese knotweed is a much better source because it's trans resveratrol, the form that your body actually utilizes. So you're getting this thing that's great for your cardiovascular system, but it's also got amodin and all this long list of other phytochemicals that have very good antimicrobial properties, not only against the Lyme microbes, but I also found, it has great activity against the SARS virus that causes COVID. So you get this broad spectrum of things. One that's common for Lyme disease is cat's claw. It was actually used traditionally because it did such a good job for cognitive function and preventing dementia. That's what it was used for traditionally. So it's affecting, we actually have a brain microbiome, and it was keeping that in check, which is really important. Chinese skullcap, that's a really nice one. Again, COVID activity, but a lot of other things. All of these herbs are what we call immunomodulating. They balance immune system functions. So the microbes actually generate inflammation to break down tissue, and they do that by manipulating messengers in the immune system called cytokines. So these herbs that I've mentioned actually calm those inflammatory cytokines, but they boost the ability of the immune system to take out cells that have been infected with microbes, which is really important. It's exactly what you want to do here. So those are just a few, and I took those for a long time. And whenever I'm stressed or get a cold or whatever, I'll start taking those again, along with a few others. But on a daily basis, I take more herbs they all have antimicrobial properties, but more herbs that just are cell protectants. And in that class are adaptogens and other herbs. I take hawthorn every day, which is great for my vascular system. Take rhodiola, an herb from Siberia. It was one of the original adaptogens. I love it. It's a favorite, but it enhances physical performance by protecting your cells. It actually improves oxygenation in tissues because it's opening up those pathways so your cells can get more oxygen. So rhodiola, turmeric, everybody knows that one. Turmeric is a wonderful anti-inflammatory. It can protect us from dementia, cancer, but it also, unlike ibuprofen that will eat a hole in your stomach if you use it every day, turmeric actually heals stomach ulcers. So the herbs have this broad spectrum of effect that's really wonderful. I take milk thistle every day. Milk thistle is an herb that protects your liver, and it protects liver cells. One of the reasons our cholesterol goes up is because we ding off our liver cells and replace them with fat cells. And that's happening all across the world at a higher rate than ever now. And you need your liver cells to manage cholesterol and blood sugar. So I think one of the reasons that we gradually elevate our cholesterol is because we ding off liver cells. I've now been taking milk thistle for 15 years continually every day. My cholesterol is better now than it was when I was in my 40s. Wow. My blood sugar is just right.
We take
So
this.
all of these things are helpful, but interestingly, we think, well, we've got this herb that's great for the liver. I read a study the other day showing that milk thistle protects the cells that remodel bone. So it's actually beneficial in postmenopausal osteoporosis too.
Wow.
Well,
So
actually,
we're having all these widespread effects. So that's just a handful of the herbs that are in the book. But there's so many out there that are just wonderful.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a great book.
it really is.
And it does detail kind of all the different herbs and I guess the wellness solution around those. So I definitely listeners, I recommend it if you want to dive into the subject in more detail and kind of know what you should be taking. One thing I was going to ask is a lot of our listeners will be kind of going through the menopause or andropause. What are some
Right.
good adaptogens or herbs they could be taking to support them with that?
Yeah. The book, it's a big, thick book. I mean, I could have put all my energy into it, but I tell people, don't be intimidated. It's like 4 small books. So one is that cellular wellness concept. Another one is the primer for the herbs. A third one is just, how do you improve your health habits? And a fourth one is just looking at these principles and applying them to specific problems like andropause and menopause, etc. And what happens is it's loss of cells. So you can define everything that happens in the body in terms of cells, including aging. So we start with one cell when a sperm and egg come together. And that divides per the program in the chromosomes to become a body. And through our childhood, we accumulate cells. We just build cells. We're in that building mode and that hits a peak about age 20. And at that point, we stop accumulating cells. But at age 20, you have 5 to 10 times more cells than you need to survive. And all of your cells are brand new. Now, after that point, you start losing cells. So what aging is loss of functional cells as we go through time. And it's because we basically burn out the mitochondria that supply energy to the cell. And I know there's a lot of debate about anti-aging, but if you look at the physics of it, you to get totally beyond that, you have to you have to get around some of the most basic laws of the universe. It's just not going to happen. So we're all going to age, we're all going to lose cells, but the idea is you want to lose cells as slow as you can. And that depends on how much you've stressed your cells. So the more you stress your cells, the faster they work harder, they burn out their mitochondria faster, so we lose more cells. So that's why by age 40, most athletes are done because they're down to half their cellular reserves and all of their cells have lost function. We just don't have as much energy. So that's happening in everybody. And it seems to, we've lived, like I said, in my 30s, I could get away with really bad health habits because I had brand new cells. Everything was good. But as I moved into my 40s, I couldn't do that anymore. So and it seems to right around that mid 40s time period, things start to come to a head. So all the things you've been doing to compromise cellular functions are really starting to get noticed, and people start having symptoms, things start breaking down. But when it comes to andropause, you have to recognize that all hormones are produced by cells. You've got testicular cells, and that is being managed by the hypothalamic pituitary system that's basically seated in the hypothalamus. And so, you've lost cells there, but if you're compromising your cells even further by, eating a bad diet, a high carb diet, stress, not eating, not getting the sleep and rest that you need, not exercising, all the toxic substances we're exposed to that have a very detrimental effect on testicular functions, plus throwing other toxins in there at any level, like alcohol or cigarettes or things like that, that can affect it. All this starts coming to a head around the same time that women are starting to go through menopause. Now, menopause is a natural process. All women will lose the cells in their ovaries to produce estrogen. So that's an effect. But they still produce testosterone, they still produce some estrogen. So hormone replacement or management of those symptoms can be really valuable in women. Men, you should produce testosterone until you're my age and well beyond. And what I can tell you is at age 66, my testosterone levels are normal, and I'm not struggling with the symptoms that I struggled with at age 47. So my hormone producing cells, my thyroid, which was compromised at that point, all of the hormone producing cells in my body are functioning like they should. So my hormones are balanced. I'm functioning like I should. The problem with taking testosterone, and sometimes, you lose enough cells in the thyroid or wherever in the body, hormone replacement can be important, but you have to remember that it's not necessarily the right kind of replacement, because hormones are a conversation between cells, and it's very, very, very dynamic. So your cells are constantly talking to one another, and your brain is sensing everything going on inside and outside, and constantly using nerves and hormone pathways to manage those functions so we're balanced. So it's constantly changing. Your thyroid is constantly changing. Everything in your body is constantly changing. So again, sometimes if you've lost enough cells, then replacement is important. But you have to remember that that replacement isn't going to mimic that conversation. It's kind of like, if you had a group of people sitting in a room trying to solve a problem, and they were quietly talking to one another, and somebody walks in, puts a soapbox down, and pulls out a bullhorn and starts screaming their one message. And they may not even be screaming it in the right language. It's going to disrupt that conversation. So I think there is definitely a place for hormone replacement, especially in menopause and even in andropause, but you have to be very careful with it. So what we're doing with the herbs is balancing those pathways that allow the hormones to work properly and supporting the cells. So there are some really good herbs for that, and they can be useful both for men and women. I feature several of those in the book. There are more. Ashwagandha is very good. Rhodiola is very good. I take a little rhodiola every day. It's a great one. There's also epimedian and there are a couple of others and what these things are doing is they have chemicals in them, phytochemicals, that are slightly androgenic. So they affect our hypothalamus in a way that it promotes feedback that the hypothalamus works those cells a little harder. It encourages normal testosterone production, both in the ovaries and testicles. So they can be really, really valuable in helping us balance these functions without having to take hormones, which can actually suppress those functions. Now, again, there are cases where people need it, and I'm not suggesting that I'm totally opposed to any kind of hormone replacement. I think you just have to be careful with it. Now, the bottom line is, all hormones are produced by cells, and if you can keep your cells healthy, and the longer you can keep your cells healthy, the better you're going to be. And that's been my strategy all along. So far, it's worked pretty well. I'm not opposed to adding in a little bit if I need to at some point, because again, we do lose cells. All of our glands gradually do atrophy as part of the aging process, but you still have to be really careful about how you administer those things so you don't actually disrupt a problem instead of enhance a problem.
Bill, this has been so
Very
fascinating.
fascinating.
Actually, what you've just said there about andropause and menopause, we have that same approach, actually, that we're not anti it, but actually if all the other factors, lifestyle factors, and also from a cellular level that you were just talking about, if they're not balanced, and I think the concerning thing is when people just use TRT or HRT, and then there's no other conscious thought about what else they can be doing with their lifestyle factor. So honestly, that was the whole conversation with you has been utterly fascinating, hasn't it?
It really has.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah. We'll put a link to your book in the show notes. If people wanted to kind of learn more about you or follow you, where could they do that?
Which they will, because this has been unbelievably fascinating. Where can they find you, Bill?
Well, the best place to find me is connected with our company. My daughter and I actually created a supplement company that we, this was during my practice, I found that it was just really hard to get high quality products that had the concentrations and the combinations of herbs and phytochemicals that I wanted. So we created a company to provide those products, and we do that. It's more like you're looking at a system instead of an herb to take for a particular symptom, which is how most herbs are sold. There's a lot of education around it, and that company is vitalplan.com. And it's so there's a lot of good content. I do periodically do consults for people through the website there, and it's more like a health coaching concept. I don't manage medications and that sort of thing. My goal is always helping the patient kind of see through and look at why they became ill in the first place and how those factors fall together to perpetuate that illness. So it's looking at those root causes at the cellular level and how can we affect those things. But the book, it's on Amazon. I'm sure you can get it shipped to UK and Europe, but it's available as a download too. So that's on the website, and it's only also on Amazon. So yeah. So thanks for getting the word out with me.
Yeah, and I will
we'll spread the word. We'll put the link to that vitalplan.com in there as well,
in
and
the show notes.
In the show notes. And Bill, thank you so much. It's been so fascinating. I really love your message. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and just the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors. Yeah.